Lenses are by far the most important way to be able to distinguish your work in today's landscape of LUTs, power grades, and everything. Everybody just seems to have the same type of imagery, which is why today we're going to be reviewing a very unique lens that I think most people do not know of or never heard about, or even if they've heard about this, they don't really know so much about this lens. I think we're at a point in filmmaking where gear is not necessarily the problem anymore. A lot of these things are now very affordable, but then it becomes a question of, in the midst of all this chaos, how do you start to choose what gear is good for you? The goal is to help you just understand how does this lens perform, which is why this video is going to mostly be a showcase, but I'll go over some of the specs and my initial thoughts about this lens, and also just the imaging and the quality of pictures that's coming out of this lens. Let's just put some context out there. Majority of the lenses kind of operate in the same way. At least that's true for most of what we have nowadays. And I think that honestly, you as a viewer, when you clicked on this video, you wanted to see how this lens looked and how it rendered images. So the most important part of any type of lens review, in my opinion, I believe should come from a place of showing you the character of the lens, showing you how it renders images, showing you what type of photos and videos come out of this lens. And that's why things like the iris blades and all these other spec things don't really matter so much to me, because all in all, what I really want to see is how does this lens perform in real life, because that's where it matters, and that's what will help me and you make a decision whether you want to buy this gear or not. This test is for the focus breathing, and you can see that as I move from this film stock, which is the Tasma Aero ISO 400, I move into the one at the back. You can see what's going on. Just look at the edges to know what is going on. You can see how the ends of the frame are sort of moving in and out with the way that I'm focusing. That is what we refer to as focus breathing. But I would still say that it is well controlled. It is decent. It's not that hard. It's not distracting unless you're looking at the edges of the frame, which for a lens, the cost of this, I don't think that is too bad. Now, anything that you see that's been shot in an open gate or 4:3 aspect ratio means that it wasn't shot on the original Sony a7 IV, and this were not shot with the CHIOPT Auras. But I do want to talk about focus breathing, because I've just shown that there is actually focus breathing on this lens. But there's a context. Now, focus breathing is a very nuanced and practical aspect of lens behavior that often gets oversimplified in reviews as either good or bad. I like to take a very practical approach in terms of how I look at these things personally. I feel like if the focus breathing is not noticeable to you or your audience in the context of your final products, the final product here being the video, then it is for all practical purposes a non-issue. If you're filming in a fast-paced dynamic situations such as action, sports, skateboarding, or even documentary, the subject is going to be moving. The composition is going to be changing. The audience's attention is going to be fixated on the action. A small change in focal length during a focus pull is completely going to be masked by the action or the overall motion and energy of the scene. For that, you nailing focus is actually way much more important than a perceptual shift in the angle of view. But if you are going to be filming in a controlled environment, I'm talking static shot on a tripod, you're doing an interview, you're doing a landscape, you're doing a product shot. Here, the conversation is different. And that's why I say context really matters. Here, any focus breathing in this very stationary ones is going to become much more apparent. The frame is going to be stable and the viewer's eye has time to settle. A visible zoom in form of this rack between, for example, a person's eye and their hands is going to be distracted in some way or another. So basically, this is the context that a lot of reviewers and filmmakers, rightly or wrongly, criticize it most harshly because they don't provide the context in terms of when talking about this focus breathing. The whole point of this conversation is that understanding why a lens is reviewed sort of helps you make a very informed decision based off of your workflow and for you to anticipate whatever pitfalls or whatever downsides that this piece of gear might have. But don't let a spec sheet or a reviewer, myself included, stop you from actually using a lens that works beautifully for your purpose. But once again, this is a review and I want you guys to be able to make an informed decision because I'm testing this lens out to see what the qualities, what the downfalls, what the best sides of this are. So we're going to start with a very controlled test and I will talk you through everything that I've noticed from the wider end, the 16 up until the 85. And I can tell you for a fact, there's something really strange going on with this lens that I think people are going to find beautiful or they're going to be very confused with that. The Aura series consists of 5 classic focal lengths. You have the 16, the 24, the 35, 50, and 85. The 16mm is also the widest in the series of 5, and they all have very minimal focus breathing. There's also low distortion and the true proportions, which means that what you see is what you get. Now, these primes do cover full frame sensors like that from Sony, your Nikon, Panasonic, Canon, and the other ones. It also covers this new camera that I will be talking about because I've stopped using the Sony system. It has a 43.5 image circle, which means that you can still use this with an APS-C camera and it would actually work well, like the FX30 and the, any other Super 35 system out there. But it will give you a tighter field of view because technically it means you will be cropping into the sensor. Because of how sharp this lens renders images, you necessarily might not be losing anything in terms of just image sharpness or the rendition of the image in general, because this lens will still give you a very sharp image. The Aura lens in the series, they produce very lifelike skin tones. So I'm thinking in terms of just vivid natural colors and just like gentle gradients, which is something that I find is really pleasing on this lens. And I think that they truly deliver anything that almost anyone can work with, which is a very good advantage of this lens. On the wide end of things, the 16mm renders true perspectives with very low distortion that is very consistent with all the other lenses in the set. Now, images with true images with true proportions and very lifelike sizes can be especially critical in scenarios where you have to use this in a car rig, because low distortion optics usually provide edge-to-edge sharpness. For the most part, this lens set gives a T1.5 maximum aperture, except the 16mm, which is a T2.2 and very ideal for subject and background separation and things like that. Also, you get very impressive low light performance by using these lenses. Now, due to the advanced coatings, at least that's what it's called, it maintains depth and texture. So what that means is when you use this, you don't sort of lose out on the contrast. You don't lose out on the quality of the image that you're seeing. It is very clean. It is very sharp. It is very true to life.
You know what I like is, look at how that lamp is coming out. The lamp in the background. I really like that texture.
So in terms of the minimum focusing distance for this, the 16mm can focus at 25 centimeters. The 24 can focus at 30 centimeters. The 32 can focus at 36 centimeters. The 50 at 35 and the 85 at 91 centimeters. So you can see that the 85, you don't really get close to the subject, but then who's going to be going super close to their subject at 85? You do need quite a good spacing to be able to use that focal length. So in terms of the design, I think it is lightweight. It is very compact, with the exception of the 16 that is the heaviest and the biggest in the bunch. Now, this does feature some very fine machining, right? On the front of this, it features not the 16 actually. On the front of everything else, you have an 88 front diameter, so you can use your filters and things like that. And on the 16, you have a 74, which makes it ideal for a lot of filtration. Now this, because of this extra layer here, you're able to attach your matte box and things like that on this. Maybe not necessarily a screw-on ND filter, for example, but a matte box will fit very well on this. Also, the focus ring, it's about 0.8 mod, which means that it is industry standard, and this will work with all your iris and focus rings in a uniform position. So you wouldn't necessarily have to change that if you are swapping lenses between shoots or you're changing focal length. All of this stay consistent across the whole set. This lenses usually come in E mount and L mount. I think that all of this will sit well on your Sony cameras, the FX30, the FX3D, the FX6, FX9s, and all the other ones. It also comes in Leica L mount and Canon RF mount. So you can use them on any camera with a Nikon Z mount adapter. You can also use these lenses on the DJI Ronin 4D, which I think is starting to gain a lot of popularity in the filmmaking world right now. So if that is your camera to go, this might be a very good offering considering how limited the lens options on that camera really is.
So now it's almost round, but as you move, see, here it's almost cat eye-ish. Look at the candles, for example. But then when you get closer to it, that's an interesting one. Yeah, like let's put it down, like cover. Yeah, and back. It doesn't wash out. See, it still has the contrast that it has, and it's still there.
Overall, this is what I think about this lens. The center sharpness is very good. I think that even when the lenses are used wide open, the edge sharpness isn't necessarily as good as the center sharpness, but I think they're still good enough to be able to use for most people in every use case. And I think that they do have a fall off, which is extremely nice and pleasing to me. I find there's a certain type of bloom that this lens just naturally gives off. One of the impressive things is that this lens actually show almost no sign of chromatic aberration. Once again, I think it does give that clean look that is really, really interesting.
It has like this halo effect that it's doing. It's very bubbly.
So I would say overall, who's this lens for? If you're looking for a very clean lens for commercial work or for films or for documentaries, this lens is definitely the way to go. I think that the biggest flaw facing CHIOPT in general as an organization is the fact that competition is very fierce right now in the affordable cine lens market. And there's so many options available. The DZOs, the Sire, the Nisis, and all these other companies. It's kind of a very hard sell for companies like this that don't necessarily have good or established brand power. And that's a very harsh reality that they would have to deal with if they do want to come into the market. CHIOPT is going to have to do a lot more marketing to be able to appeal to potential audiences, to be able to see just how good these lenses are. The price of this thing, it's a very decent offering considering how fast they come at T1.5. There's not a lot of lenses on the market that do come at a T1.5, and considering just how many is in the set, I think that those lenses are very unique. I love the image that they give. I love the bloom that it does. I love the characteristic. I love everything about the design. I probably would have not had this in silver just because of the ability. It might probably draw attention to itself if you're on a production set because it will, you know, start to shine like a diamond and all things like that. This lens comes in a silver casing that is well done, very well padded with all the lens markings already in there. So you know which lens goes into where in the casing. It's designed to be waterproof. It's designed to be fall proof. I wouldn't advise you dropping them though, but I think the packaging of the lens in itself just really does well.